To understand Epicurus's point, he, or at least his answer when he's talking about tranquility as pleasure, because it's very different from what we think is pleasure. You have to understand his distinction between the three kinds of desires: natural desires, necessary desires, and groundless desires. So natural desire, I think it's fair to say, he doesn't give this definition, but I think it's fair to say, that a natural desire is, if you fulfill it, right, you acquire the object of the desire, then yeah, it produces a kind of contentment, a kind of pleasure. Right? It feels good in some way, shape, or form, right? Yeah, and we can think of some ready examples. Food, right? Your favorite breakfast, your favorite drink, coffee, espresso, espresso. You can think of, things that you work for, that you're trying to chase after for, maybe buy what's on sale at the store. Clothing, right? We like clothing. Not only is it good to protect us from the elements, but hey, it looks nice. We like the way it looks. Maybe we like the prestige that it gets us. Okay. Clothing. Cars. Computers. Oh, we love chasing after our smartphones. Right? There's that whole smartphone war that's going on. Your internet wireless plan, or data plan, or even your wireless plan at home. Couches, furniture, curtains. All these things are natural desires. If you fulfill them, then they bring you at least some measure of pleasure. So necessary desires are actually a kind of natural desires. So if you fulfill the object of the necessary desire, you do experience a kind of contentment. But the difference between a necessary desire and a merely natural one is that if you don't fulfill a necessary desire, then you're going to experience pain, dis-ease of the body and mind, and probably the heart as well. So think about, even just me out here on the trail. Right? There are some things I need. Right? I need some water, some refreshment, something to keep me hydrated, to keep me conscious, and to give me energy. I need some kind of food. If I'm out here long enough, I need some kind of food. Right? I need protection from the sun. So the straw hat's actually really great protection from the sun. Same thing with the shirt. The shirt has it's a certain SPF just kind of built into it and helps to keep me cool. And these are necessary in this regard, because if I didn't have them, I'd be in pretty bad shape. If I didn't have a shirt, well, first of all, I wouldn't be shooting video, right? But if I didn't have a shirt, I'd be sunburnt like that, right? I don't go to tan, right? I go from egg white to lobster red in a matter of seconds, and it's really kind of awful. So yeah, I have sunscreen, I have my hat on, I have the shirt, I take care, and I try to get to the shade as much as I can. I take care to, keep myself protected from the sun. If I didn't have that, dis-ease, right? Dis-ease of the body, right? So that, this is a necessary desire. It's natural in the sense that if you fulfill it, but then on top of that, what makes it necessary is if you do not fulfill the necessary desires, this causes pain. With other kinds of merely natural desires, probably not so much. At this point, I'm pretty well addicted to coffee, and I love my espresso in the morning. But if I never had espresso ever, I'd be just fine. Right? I'd be just fine. In fact, I'd probably be in better health. So, espresso is a natural desire, but it's certainly not necessary. And there's all kinds of foods that are natural, that are necessary, right? And then there's some that are not. So, you need You need your vegetables, you need proteins, you need some carbs, you need some fats, you need a fair amount of these macronutrients. You have to make sure you have enough of the vitamins and everything else. Okay. Right? But beyond that, you really need it? Probably not. And then we have groundless desire. Now, groundless desire, probably, the way I think to understand this is whether it's fulfilled or not, it doesn't cause pleasure. If it might even, I don't know. Again, I'm probably reading too much into Epicurus because he doesn't really consider this possibility. But even having the anxiety over fulfilling a groundless desire is itself a pain. So you really ought to even just avoid that. So the example that he gives is avoiding death, and this is a groundless desire. I mean, first of all, you're going to die, and for Epicurus, there is no hereafter. So, if there's no hereafter, you simply cease to exist. So death is neither pleasure nor pain. There's no point in wanting it. There's no point in trying to in not wanting it, because there's no experience of death itself. Therefore, even if you, in trying to avoid death, it's not going to do you any good. So, this is his example of groundless desire. And I kind of wonder whether he thought of this just when talking about death. Because he doesn't give very many examples, at least not in this letter. And I'm not an Epicurean scholar, so maybe somebody who knows better than I do might pipe up. But I think we can nevertheless get some mileage out of this and give some modern day examples. So one example that I thought of anyway for a groundless desire is at least some sorts of social media. So here's a really kind of important one, right? Communicating your political view on social media, not going to make you happy. It's not going to bring you pleasure. At least how I see most of it happen. Most of what I see happening on social media for communicating political views is some sort of harsh criticism or even unfair characterization or just insult to the other side. Okay? So if you're doing this, first of all, if you're doing this to try to persuade people to abandon that view, it's not going to work. Right? Maybe in a schoolyard, somebody might be persuaded to abandon their view if you call them names, but we left behind grade school a long time ago. Yeah. So calling people names is not going to persuade somebody else to abandon their view. Maybe it's to persuade somebody who hasn't made up their mind. I mean, I guess you could try that. But you're persuading somebody with the ideas like, they're so horrible, I'm going to call them names, and it's obviously true. And my side is innocent, which is not going to happen. Right? No group is innocent. Every group has committed some kind of atrocity in its history. Right? If you can think of an example that hasn't, I'll be curious to see it. You can put it in the comments. I'll be curious to see it. So, if you're trying to persuade somebody to change their mind by insults, first of all, it's going to be ineffective. Secondly, there might be some kind of malicious joy in insulting somebody else, at least momentarily. But if you really do thoroughly enjoy this, I mean, if it just brings you a lot of pleasure to cause, to insult other people, you're a kind of a sadist, right? Because you're getting joy out of hurting somebody else. And that's a mental disorder. It's an emotional disorder. Right? So, at least it's under some versions, right? So if you get your joy out of being cruel to other people, first of all, that's kind of messed up. Secondly, it's going to be fleeting and it's never going to be enough. Third, there's going to be some part of you that just really does kind of like, it's anger. And this is fueled by anger, and anger doesn't feel good. right? And finally, if you start being cruel to others, it's not going to take long before others are cruel to you. Then you're spending all your time on social media insulting each other with these hate-filled comments going back and forth. And who does that make feel better? I can't imagine anybody feels better doing that. Yeah. And it's gotten to be so bad that people are starting to recognize it. It's almost a joke, right? It's like, what'd you do last night? I was up till 4 a.m. Why? What were you doing? Somebody on the internet was wrong. Really? Yeah. And even the whole behavior itself, this sort of treating each other really badly online is getting its own psychological diagnoses. Online disinhibition effect or syndrome, something like that, right? So the idea is that we are teaching ourselves poor social habits by our interactions online. So, at least for my money, yeah, I think this, insulting, condemning other people online, especially with regard to politics, is a groundless desire. It's not going to make you happy. I mean, give the best insult possible. Just really grind those insults down. Are you going to feel better? No. You're not going to persuade anybody. I mean, if people are actually persuaded by this, I'd like to see those numbers. I'd like to see that statistical study. It's like, yeah, how often were you persuaded to adopt your views because somebody called you a jackbooted fascist? Like, oh yeah, I did. Yeah, I just thought that was terrible. So I want to avoid being a jackbooted fascist. So I switched sides. I'd be surprised if that happens. So yeah, groundless desire. Even if it's fulfilled, and maybe it can't be, even if it's fulfilled, it's not going to bring you pleasure. And we might even push this point home, right? Say, suppose it is fulfilled. What if it brings you pain, misery? Definitely a groundless desire. So those are 3 kinds of desires for Epicurus: natural, necessary, and groundless. And what he says you should do is pursue only the necessary desires.